everyone, and welcome back to the School Leadership Show. With me, as always, co-host Jen David Lang. Hi, Jen.
No adjective, no organized or productive or efficient co-host.
Yeah, I think that's probably appropriate. My organized and efficient co-host, who also often acts as my accountability partner.
There you go. I'll take
Yes.
it. Thank you.
All
How you
right.
doing, Mike?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good.
How's Brooklyn?
Brooklyn is excellent, except I wish spring would come. Still too dark and rainy for me.
Yeah, no kidding. Same thing in Albany. All right, so we've got a mini-sode here that we're doing today. You want to talk a little bit about how we got here and why we're doing these mini-sodes, these short shows, well, not really short, but shows with multiple books, which is different for us.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to keep them a little bit short, but maybe not with all this banter. So on my website, as many of you know, I run the Main Idea. I write book summaries for school leaders, and that's where we get a lot of our material. So I put up a page of must-read books for school leaders. So I took 10 categories of topics that school leaders care a lot about: school-wide change, supervising teachers, improving teams, stuff like that. And I chose just 3 or 4 books. So you could focus during the summer, whenever you have time, and do a deep dive on a single topic. So today we decide to do, right, Mike, being organized and productive.
100%. A topic that is near and dear to my heart.
Yes, you talk about it a lot. You do workshops on it. And yeah, we just thought it was a good topic if you're heading into the summer. If you're not organized, it doesn't matter if you have wonderful, amazing ideas for school transformation, because you won't get to them.
Well, yeah, if you can't get your work done, you can't change things. Like,
yeah,
I think it's the bottom line. And I think, we talked about this a bunch of times. I think in schools of ed leadership, there's a lot of great stuff on curriculum and instruction and supervision, finance, HR, things like that. But we really don't teach people the skills that you need in order to function in what's basically an office environment and to keep yourself together. So 2 main categories of books today. Productivity is sort of the bigger, or productivity, organization, getting things done kind of thing. 2 main categories. First, we're going to talk about 2 books that have to do with habits.
Yeah.
And then we're going to move into 2 books that are more, would you say, like globally about productivity?
Organization. I would say habits, then organization. And before we start, so as you're listening to these ideas, imagine yourself having better habits and being more organized. But now imagine the power if you read any of these books or book summaries with your cabinet, your leadership team. Wouldn't it be great to have a whole leadership team that's organized? I mean, heck, you could do it with all your teachers. Imagine a whole school of organized people. Why stop there?
Imagine that, right?
Imagine that.
Imagine if everybody could just get their job done. All right. So first book, The Power of Habits. Or Power of Habit. This one is Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. And this one's by Charles Duhigg. This is one of my favorites. Why did you pick this book?
Well, he's the classic, right? He's sort of the first one. I don't even know what year. This might have been 2012. 12. Oh, you're good. So he was the one who said that a lot of what we do during the day is not decision making. It's actually just the result of habit, right? We don't wake up every morning and think like, wait a minute, what's the first step in brushing my teeth? What's the first step in making my coffee? No, the brain conserves energy and we turn a lot of those decisions into habits. And that's a good thing. But of course, we do have some bad habits that we need to change. So he really brought some awareness to the process of a habit so that we could build good habits and break those bad habits. And I think he was the one who coined the term, the habit loop. And he basically said the habit has 3 different parts.
Yeah. So what are the 3 parts of the habit loop? Because this is a really interesting concept that I think you're right, he kind of pioneered.
Right. Because we used to just think, oh, I have a drinking habit. Oh, I have an exercise habit. We didn't understand that there were parts. So he sort of broke it into the habit loop, which has the cue, the routine, and the reward. So the cue is anything that starts the habit, right? You see a commercial for candy, right? That's the cue. Then the habit is your candy bar eating habit, and the reward, oh boy, the sugar rush, doesn't that feel good, right? So he helped us realize that there are those three parts. And the book is written very much like sort of Malcolm Gladwell, lots of great stories about people and different industries. So it's certainly not an education book. It's a pleasure to read. It's a lot of fun. But it helps us become aware of this pattern. So, for example, Alcoholics Anonymous is an incredible habit-changing organization. And what they tried to do with alcoholics is they said, yeah, you're going to have the cue, right? That you want something, right? It's not always to be drunk, but it could be, you want companionship, escape, right? And then you drink, that's the routine. And then the reward is, right, you've got the escape. So they tried to just change the routine. They said, yeah, the cue is going to stay there. You need the reward, but let's see if we can change just the routine. And he talks about toothbrushing, how many years ago, I think in the early 1900s, only 7% of Americans regularly brush their teeth.
Oh, gross.
And then, yeah. Glad you're not living then. And then the guy who founded Pepsodent, I don't think he didn't know about cue routine reward, but he came up with this idea of trying to get people into the habit of brushing their teeth. And the cue he got Americans to do was run their tongue over their teeth. And you have this natural plaque, right? So that was the cue. The routine was brushing your teeth. And then the reward was that lovely minty feeling. And he did such a good job of instigating this habit that within 10 years, 65% of Americans started to develop that habit. So, so if you can play around with the cue, routine, and reward, you can build good habits, break bad ones. And it's not just an individual thing. In The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg talks about the habits of successful organizations. And he talks about something called a keystone habit. And that's sort of like what we might call like a high leverage strategy. It's a habit that's so powerful that it affects lots of other habits.
What's an example?
So he talks about, this is not an education example, but an aluminum company where a new CEO came in and decided to focus on worker safety. And everybody thought this guy was crazy. What about profits? What about efficiency? Right. And he was focusing on worker safety. But what happened was he empowered the workers to make the kind of changes they need to make sure it was safer. So that was like distributed leadership. There had to be better communication to keep things safe. So that one change in focusing on worker safety ended up making all of these other changes in communication and empowerment, that the whole company became more profitable. There were fewer accidents, but the whole company became more profitable. So there are ideas about making changes for entire organizations. So it's definitely something you can read for yourself, right? To develop the habit of getting into classrooms more as an individual, or checking email all day, right? That terrible habit. But it can also work to transform the school's habits into more productive ones.
Very cool. All right. Should we switch over to Atomic Habits? So Atomic Habits. Now, this is another one that I absolutely love this book. And now, who's the author?
James Clear.
James Clear. That's right. And so the title is a little misleading because he taught, Atomic Habits. Now, when I first saw the title, I thought atomic, like big, like atomic bomb, but he's not thinking that way in terms of atomic. You want to say more about that?
Sure. Yeah. And I do a workshop on habits for educators, and I focus heavily on this book. People really love him. So he had a crazy life story. On the last day of 10th grade, he was hit in the head with a baseball bat, shattered both of his eye sockets, several fractures to the skull, concussion. I mean, it was months and months before he could even drive. And then 6 years later, when he graduated from college, he got the university's top athletic and academic awards. And how did he do that? He made these very, very tiny changes in his life every day, right? He just started straightening up his room a little bit more, studying a little more, sleeping a little more, going to the gym just a little bit each day. And what he found, and it's the motto that's on the book cover itself, is that tiny changes can lead to remarkable results. And so I think people like this book because they like the idea of making small changes. And in fact, I just today saw on Twitter, there was a guy who had two images, one of himself as really enormous and one as sort of a fit um, guy. And he said he credits this book with the small changes he made. So James Clear certainly built on the ideas of Charles Duhigg and also gathered information from psychology, neuroscience, like biology. And what he did is he realized that in putting his own life together, that there were 4 laws of behavior change that you need to change habits. If you want the habit to be effective, you have to make it 1, obvious, 2, attractive, 3, easy, and 4, you have to make it satisfying. And he has all of these really concrete strategies to go into those 4. And he also has great stories about, I could tell you one of them if you want, but his book is also sure. So, one of his law of behavior change is to make the habit easy, right? We think as humans who want to make behavior changes, oh, it's hard, I got to work harder. No, you got to make it easy. But the corollary to that is make it harder not to do it. So he tells the story about Victor Hugo, who was the author of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And Victor Hugo was pissing off the publisher, not getting his submissions in on time, because instead of writing the next few chapters, he was in Paris chatting away in all the cafes. And so he wasn't getting his work done. So when the publisher got upset, he said, okay, I got to crack down. So how can I make it harder not to do this work? So he went to wherever he went to write, and he asked his assistant to take all of his clothing and leave with it and come back at the end of the day. And because he was naked and he couldn't go out and go chat in the cafes, he got his book. He actually got The Hunchback of Notre Dame submitted 2 weeks early. So that's an example of making it easier to do the habit by making it harder.
Right, like introducing friction into the system, right? If you go back to your candy example from before, if there's no candy in the house, it's hard to eat it.
Absolutely.
So,
and right. You come home from a long day, right, of leading a school, and boy, is it easy just to pop that Snickers in your mouth. It's much harder to look in the fridge, find all your produce is spoiled, go to the store, get new produce, wash it, cut it. So on Sundays, right, Sunday evening, buy some carrots, wash them, cut them, put them in Tupperware in your fridge so that when you're home and feeling snacky, so you make it easier to do the right thing. So those are the kinds of suggestions.
I love that strategy. And batching in and of itself is just such a great strategy. That's what it is. Instead of getting the stuff out to cook every single night, do a bunch of the prep work on Sunday so that your onions are already cut up for Wednesday.
Exactly.
Things like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Exactly.
I do. This book is great. Do you want to talk about the laws that he's got?
Sure. Yeah. So that was the strategy we just talked about was under the category of make it easy. And I don't think we have time to go into all of them if we want to hit all the books, but for the law of make it obvious, I'll share one strategy with you that he has, which is habit stacking. That's one of my favorites. So what you do is you take a habit that you already have and you add the new habit that you want. So, right. So Mike and I can out us both. We both have the habit of brushing our teeth in the morning, right? We're not a part of those 93% of Americans a century, right? We don't have to think about it. We brush our teeth. But let's say for a new habit, I think I'm going to be a calmer leader during the day if I start to meditate. So every morning after I brush my teeth, I'm going to spend a few minutes right there in the bathroom at the sink meditating. So I take the habit that I already have and I add onto it the habit that I want, and then I start to make that my new habit. So those are the kinds of strategies he has that are very concrete in the book.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Do we want to switch over to our organization books or our productivity books?
I think if we're going to get through them, but yeah, these first 2 books are, this book also, the James Clear, like I said, lots of great stories, like Hunchback of Notre Dame, definitely a great summer read for the beach or wherever you are.
And he's good. I subscribe to, now that I'm thinking about it, I subscribe to his email newsletter. And he does, every once in a while he's got some really cool stuff in there. Like he's a good thinker. It's interesting.
He's great. Yeah.
All right. So now we're gonna go deep. We got a classic here. recently redone, Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by none other than David Allen. Now, the first version of that book came out when?
Well, I have a summary of the first. I'm trying to think. When is this one? It's been on the New York Times bestseller list for a gazillion weeks. Again, it's not an education book. It is just a general for-profit, not-for-profit. Let's see. The one I'm looking at says, originally 2001.
Yeah, it was early. And then he did an update. I think the update's 2015, I think.
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting as we get into this. He has a very, I don't know if I'd call it rigid, but structured system that full disclosure, like I couldn't implement the whole system. Yet there were a lot of individual strategies and approaches that I took away from it. So do you want to talk about kind of how you approach thinking about this book?
Yeah. And first I want to say, like, his attitude isn't to stress you out. Like, it's not like, oh, here's how you can fit 50 more things into your week. No, not at all. His idea is like, how can we take all the stuff that's in your head and put it somewhere so that when I'm going to translate this into education. He doesn't say this. So when you're working with a teacher, right, or observing a class, you can be fully present and you're not thinking, oh, I forgot that. Oh, I forgot that. Because if you think about the busy school leader or district leader, you're constantly being given to-dos, right? Someone passes you in the hallway. Oh, can you send me that article you talked about, right? There's a request from the district. Fill out this paperwork, turn it back, right? Oh, a parent says, yeah, I'm not happy. Can you move my kid's bus stop? There's just constant people putting to-dos on your list. And then you're putting to-dos, right? Oh, I have a great idea to improve the way I give teacher feedback. Oh, I want to read this book. Oh, I should learn Spanish because a large percentage of my students speak Spanish, right? So you're adding your own to-do. So what do you do with all these to-dos floating around? So
he has a great quote. I don't know if you were going to use this quote. I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something like, our brains are for having ideas, not holding them. Like, and you think about it like a computer, right? The difference between RAM and ROM, is it? I can't remember anywhere. But like, if you have all, like you said, if you have all those things rattling around in your head about what you're thinking about having to do, it's very difficult to focus on the here and now. So, and that's a truism that I love from his book. Like, you got to get the garbage out of your head so you can think about the important stuff.
Absolutely. So that's the overarching. No, I wasn't going to share that quote, but he does have a quote in the beginning where one of the people who worked with him said, when I habitually applied the tenets of this program, it saved my life. When I faithfully applied them, it changed my life. Because it does. It can change your life to get organized. So basically, you don't have to get this complicated, but I do a lot of what he suggests. But he says you have to have a way to capture all of those items that I shared that are coming your way, all of your to-do items. You have to be clear about what they are, because, planning PD for next week is not a clear task. That's a big project, right? Mm-hmm. Improving the English curriculum. That's a project. That's not, so you have to, so you capture, you have to clarify, then you have to organize where all of these to-dos go. Fourth, you've got to reflect on it, right? You can't just start doing the first thing in front of you. Otherwise, you'll only be putting out fires and not doing what's important. And then you've got to engage and actually do the tasks. So he says there are these 5 steps. And, one of the most important things is that I think he helps you think about the buckets that these to-do items need to land in. Right. So something comes across my desk, and the very first question he says you should ask, he has this workflow diagram, which I've simplified in the summary, is it actionable? Right. So Mike sends me, a funny joke in the email. Right. So no, there's no action. So I either decide, do I want to trash it? Do I want to save it for reference, right? Or do I want to put it on a someday, maybe do it at some future time, right? I didn't think it was that funny, trash it, right? I want to use it in a newsletter that's about this topic, then I have to be able to save it. So there's that category. But then there's is it actionable? Yes. And he divides the actions into 2 things. One, if it's fewer than 2 minutes, then just do it, right?
I love that. That is, I live by that. If I'm walking by something in the house and it's going to take me less than 2 minutes to take care of, or even 30 seconds, I'm like, okay, this is happening now.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's actionable and it's under 2 minutes, do it. If it's not under 2 minutes, then you can delegate it to someone. And he has what's called a waiting for list. So all the principals who are afraid of delegating things, right? I might have a Mike Dowdy list, all the things that I delegate to him. So they're not going away. I'm still writing them down. Or you might defer it. And I might put that on my calendar, or he has something called a next actions list, which is too much detail for now.
But even thinking about the calendar, I think the calendar can be, for many people, a very underutilized strategy for capture. Like, I work really hard to, when I'm talking with someone and maybe it's about presenting some workshop later on, it's in 2 months or whatever. So I'll put the workshop on my calendar, and then I'll go into my calendar and maybe a month before it, block out time to work on it, so that I'm not thinking all the time about, oh God, when am I going to get to that presentation? But I don't have to think about that because I know there's time on the calendar to do it before the presentation.
Yes. And people forget that other block, right? Sometimes they just put
Yeah.
the presentation in, but not the block to work on. But yeah, and he has a lot of clever ideas. One of his ideas I use, when he wrote this, he had tickler files, but I use my Google Calendar. Let's say there's something I want to discuss with Mike 6 months down the line, right? I don't have a specific day. So on my Google Calendar, on the first of every month, I have to do in May, to do in June, to do. So I'll say, you know what, I want to talk to Mike, but not until like November. So I put it under November 1st to do in November. And all of those items I put there, then when November comes, I pull out my November one. It says to do in November, and then I spread them out throughout the month. And so that's an idea that came from him.
Yeah, this book really is a must read for any kind of leader in any kind of bureaucratic organization, because, especially that waiting for list, that's life changing, because that really does, like you said, it enables you and frees you to delegate, because you're not worried like, is Jen really going to do this? And how often do I have to check? No, it's on the list.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. And also, and it might be the next book, I can't remember which is which, where they talk about this, a much more efficient thing than every time I think of something I have to tell Mike for me to bother him. Instead, I keep a Mike Dowdy list.
Yep.
And so then I list the items so that then I can sit down with him once and I'm say, Mike, this, including the things that I delegated and asked him to do, but other things I might just want to talk about.
It's so funny that you bring that up, because like, I think I do that as a way to manage up in my organization when I need to talk to my boss. And then I find that the people who report to me also manage me that way. So they keep their list, their running list. And sometimes they'll put it, we use WebEx Teams. So sometimes, they'll put it in there and just sort of like keep adding to it, so that when we get together, we pull up that and rip through the list and we're good. We don't forget anything.
That's a great way to do it. Yeah. If you have a standing meeting or something,
Yeah.
You could put it in your calendar. I love it. All right. We should be efficient.
You are. Wow. You're all over this. Okay. I love that. I love this journey for us, Jen. Okay. So the next one is the Together Leader, Get Organized for Your Success and Sanity, by, I'm going to butcher her name.
Maya Hake Merlin.
Well
yes.
done. Okay.
Yes. And her first book was The Together Teacher. So I do have a summary of that if people want for their teachers. But yeah, this is the Together Leader. And she uses the word together because she says it goes beyond being organized. She says it includes being prioritized, planned, efficient, organized, flexible, predictable, intentional, and reliable. So Maya is all of those things. And and she does workshops and trains people. But the reason I included this one is that she has a lot of really great tools. And so basically, she says you need 6 key organizational tools. So you might take a look at this book for that, right? You need to have yearly goals. You need to have priority plans. And that's sort of like, what are you doing in the next 3 months, So, if you're doing this for the beginning of the school year, September, October, November. So you've got your larger goals, but then what does this mean for September, October, November? And then again, kind of like I was talking about, once you know what you have to get done for September, then you can break it into the weeks. She talks about having the third tool is a meeting matrix. Sometimes we don't even realize how many meetings we have. So it's really mapping out all of those meetings.
I use that one like crazy. I have a Google Doc that I share with all of the managers that I work with and all of the different meetings. So it has probably 10 columns across the top is each individual meeting. And it's really cool. So you put it in for the entire year. So we could be talking about something at a meeting in May, and somebody's like, oh, we got to do X. Like, well, no, we don't need to talk about that until September. And then right then somebody puts it in the document for the executive leadership team meeting in September. So that's a great one.
That's a great tool. Yeah. So we have yearly goals, priority plans, meeting matrix, and then the comprehensive calendar. And what she suggests you do first, and I hear this from a lot of people, is create your ideal week, right? So put in, right, if you have a meeting, if you have a cabinet meeting, you have a PLC, you have a leadership, whatever you've got, put those meetings in. And then think about, like, a lot of this comes from David Allen too, your energy level, right? When do you want to be observing teachers and giving feedback, right? So you might put in those blocks. Like, ideally, I would like to greet the students, not even sit my butt down at my desk and observe 3 teachers every morning. And I'm going to block that out and tell my secretary, don't bother me then. I'd rather do my meetings later on if I can choose to, when I have less energy, right? Put your ideal week together and then try to live that. Yeah.
And I would argue too, as you're putting that ideal week together, not only like scheduling observation time, but even just scheduling time in classrooms and putting that on the calendar first. And then what ends up happening is, well, I need to meet with Mike. Well, I'm sorry, he's not available until, whenever, it doesn't, maybe the meetings happen, Tuesday mornings and Thursday afternoons. Those are the times that are open for meetings. And then what happens? The meetings go in there and it protects your other time. So that's
that's a huge one. And my own personal tweak is that a lot of people schedule their observation times, and I say schedule your one-on-one debriefs with your teachers or meetings, because they're in classes, right? You can't just meet with them anytime. So if generally that you debrief with Ms. Smith, or you meet with Ms. Smith every other Tuesday at 12:10, right? You're going to take 15 minutes of her prep time. Then it kind of gets your butt into her classroom to observe ahead of time. And if you haven't, there's many other things that supervisors can do other than debrief classroom visits. You can look at Uniplan. There's a lot of other things you can do. So I'm a big fan of scheduling the one-to-ones, because then you make sure that your feedback is face-to-face, which is what Kim Marshall always says. Otherwise, you observe a teacher and it's like, oh no, they're busy, they don't have any preps, and you don't end up seeing them. So you just you put a Post-it, you send an email, you never actually do it. So that's what I would say. But anyway, it's going off topic.
Well, yes and no. I would add a corollary to that too. When scheduling observations, I would always ask my assistant to if it was a half-hour observation, I would ask her to put 45 minutes on the calendar, and then I would do the observation and then stay in the classroom to finish writing it up so that it's done. Instead of, okay, now I got to find time to finish writing this up. Instead, it's on the calendar. You got the time. It's fresh in your mind. Do it right then.
That's a great hack. That's great. Excellent.
All right. So what's the later list? That's the next one.
Yeah, the later list. I have a version of this. I need to clean mine up. But it's basically, a lot of what is stuck in our email inboxes or in our heads are things that we want to do, but they really come later. So she gives different examples in the book, and I have a few examples in my summary. So the way it might look is just a document, or you can always use apps for these things too, or an app where, it has like November, December, January, right? And you're putting these things in. It's not your calendar, but it's your later list. Or, it could be an Excel document, right? Where you have projects, tasks, start date, estimated time. And so you could sort by all kinds of things, right? Let me sort by estimated time. I only have 10 minutes now, right? Oh, I'll do this. Or, oh, I've got a rainy day. I've got 120 minutes. You could sort by that. Or start date, right? If you have this Excel document and you have, oh, I know I've got to do this. I don't want to start it till February, right? Hiring, I'm going to start in February, right? So then you can sort your list by start date, and all the things that you're going to start in February come up. So it's the idea of having a place to put things that are going to be for later. Another example is by category. And this is sort of my later list, which is getting a little unwieldy because you have to, I'll tell you about the key to making all of this work. So you might have it by category. What's everything I need to do for work? What's everything? Let's be more specific. Everything I need to do for, coaching, supervising teachers. What's everything I need to do for the building? What's everything I need for, family engagement? What's everything I need to do for this new initiative, right? You could do it by topic and then also include your personal ones. Maya really says include your personal life too, because if you've got to make an appointment for a dentist, like you got to do that during the day, right? So you have to have that somewhere too. So keep your personal, your professional. So there's lots of different ways to organize it, but the way that this all comes together, and this is true for David Allen's scheme too, is you need to have regular routines where you're looking and planning all of this, right? Like if you're going to have yearly goals, you need to have a time when you're actually writing those and you look back on them. And I think it's Maya who talks about the weekly meeting with myself. I'm not sure what it's called exactly, but like it could be Friday afternoon, or maybe you're exhausted, maybe Saturday morning, go to a cafe where nobody's going to bother you and look at what's everything you did last week. What are the things coming up for this week? And go and look at your calendar, look at that later list. Oh, I'm going to pull this from my later list and put it on my week list, right? Oh, I'm going to pull this, Jen, for my November one and put this on my list for what's coming up. If you don't have that meeting with yourself, then you can't go through that whole diagram that David Allen talks about, where you're going through, you've captured all these tasks, and now you've got to be asking yourself, is it actionable? Is it not? Is it 2 minutes, right? You need that time, that reflection time. So all systems fall apart without this last step.
And that's huge. And I think, and at the risk of sounding ageist in reverse, I think, I felt like when I was a new administrator, like newly minted, when I was 25 years old, it was like I could go on raw talent and brute force, right? And a young mind and young memory. Like now I can't do it. Like I have to have tools that help me remember things, because I don't know about you, but in my advanced age, I can't, every day that goes by, I feel like I remember less.
I think it has nothing to do with age. It has a lot more to do with where are you going to put all these ideas, right? And her final tool, which we didn't get to, is the weekly worksheet, right?
Yeah.
And this goes back to big rocks and everything, right? If you have your weekly worksheet of what you need to get done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of your upcoming week, without that, all you're going to do is put out fires, right? When the angry parent calls, when the frustrated teacher bangs on your door, that's what you're going to deal with. And you're not going to get really big changes done unless you know, okay, for Monday, my 3 priorities are this, and I've got to track down this person and talk to this person, right? It's not going to happen. You're going to just run around putting out fires.
And there is a bit of an elephant in the room too, because I think, as school leaders, we want to be accessible. We want to have an open door. We want people to be able to come in whenever they want. But at the same time, like I don't just get to walk into my doctor's office whenever I want, or my dentist. We're, a school leader is an executive, and the time is valuable, and it's okay to have people make appointments. In fact, that's what they should be doing.
Yeah, or have office hours for things that come up. And they're going to appreciate that, because all the other things that you promised them that they would do, that you would do, hand them that article, observe their, science lab next week, all those things they're asking for, you're not going to be able to follow through and be a trustworthy leader if you're just responding anytime someone bangs on your door.
Well, and if I think about, sort of the intersection of all 4 of these books, I mean, there's a ton of overlap, which is good, because that means we know that that's the truth is in there somewhere. But I think one of the things that's really important to think about is this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy of productivity, because if you've got all of this stuff under control internally and externally, you're going to be more available to people during the day. So maybe so let's say I have more time to be in classrooms and to be walking around and to be in the cafeteria and to be every place else, where a teacher might come up to me and ask a question that I can answer right then that saves an email in the future. Yes. So I think it's a flywheel, but it takes a while to get going. That's the problem.
Yeah. And it's not available just in terms of time. It's also available in terms of presence, because teachers know when you're running through your to-do list in your head rather than they're
paying attention,
fully present with them. 100%. Students know that. Families know that. So, all right, we should end there, because this is a mini-sode.
Mini-sode. All right. Well, we got 4 in. That's good. All right. I will. We should have more of an end where it's just going to be like, okay, we should end now. So let's wrap it up a little bit. So 4 great books for leaders to tackle at their leisure. Lots of overlap among them, and definitely a great topic. We could talk about this forever.
We could. We'll have to see what our next one will be. Will it be school-wide change or coaching teachers? Who knows? We'll take a look.
Who knows? We'll see. All right. Well, thanks, Jen. I appreciate the conversation as always. And the summaries are fantastic and lots of great stuff for people to access and use.
Yeah, great chatting with you today.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the School Leadership Show, a podcast for aspiring and practicing school leaders. Send your comments, questions, and show ideas to me, Mike, at schoolleadershipshow.com. And please consider rating the podcast in iTunes and leaving a comment. And definitely pass the show along to your colleagues.